the creator, Pablo Ruiz Picasso.
Ay!
1937, Spain. Picasso's native land is divided and brutalized by civil war. Guernica, a small town in the north, is wiped out by the rebel Franco's bombs. Deeply moved, Pablo Picasso, then aged 56, immediately paints a monumental canvas to commemorate the massacre and emphasize the horrors of war. For the first time, his art reflected his political awareness, and Picasso used physical distortions of figures to express his private fears and emotions. The weeping women with children, the screaming victims, the shattered warrior and his horse, the noble and impassive bull surveying the scene, tell of his concern for man and introduce a new vocabulary of forms.
La fuerza de mi querer.
The mood of Guernica continued to influence a number of Picasso's subsequent figures. Sometimes, however, he could still see beauty in a young friend. But Picasso often used those closest to him to inspire his search for new expressive forms. Dora Maar, his mistress. His daughter. Sabartes, his secretary. 2 women. Night Fishing at Antibes, painted in August 1939. Picasso found here in a speared fish, a symbol of the conflict in which France would shortly be defeated. In 1940, Picasso retired into his studio in Paris, where he was haunted by images of death in the world outside. And as he looked around him, he realized how meager were the provisions on which his own survival depended. Even a ripening tomato plant became a symbol of tenacity. Lovemaking lost all its romance and tenderness. In 1945, the war is won and finished. But Picasso paints the charnel house to perpetuate the horrors of the Nazi concentration camps. Yet at this same moment, Picasso made a classically inspired sculpture, Man with a Lamb, as a symbol of hope for the future. 1945-46, Picasso, free and happy, works with new enthusiasm. He takes up lithography, a long series in which 2 nudes go through progressive stages of simplification. King David spies on Bathsheba bathing. Picasso used successive states of the same lithograph to explore the king's lecherous character through his changing facial expressions. Repeated changes result from Picasso's belief that there is no single correct pictorial solution. 1946-47, Picasso is living at Antibes, the classical city of Antipolis on the Mediterranean shore. He works in the Chateau Grimaldi, which he quickly fills with happier works. Many subjects are monumental figures. The first Picasso Museum is born. The largest composition here, entitled The Joy of Life, is inspired by classical mythology: centaurs, centauresses, piping and dancing fauns. Even Sabarthes joins the rout. The beach becomes a setting for bacchanalian festivities. In the nearby village of Valoris, Picasso, now nearing 70, discovers a local craft, ceramics. Working in the Madura pottery, he manipulates the clay and his fantasy takes over. He decorates the traditional shapes of plates and jugs with his own themes. Valoris became for a while the center of Picasso's activities because in 1947 he bought a house there and settled down with his family. Many works reveal his delight in family life with his two young children, Claude and Paloma, which literally means the dove of peace. Picasso even used his fingers dipped in lithographic ink to create a lively effect. Claude, born in 1947, was the elder child. Paloma, born 2 years later, was named in honor of the Congress for Peace, for which Picasso made this poster. While the children played games, Picasso, too, amused himself inventing new forms of writing. Drawing an imaginary and humorous portrait of Balzac, and experimenting in lithography with drawings of clowns and circus scenes. In a more serious mood, however, Picasso did stylistic exercises. He transposed El Greco's Portrait of an Artist into his own formal language. Courbet's Young Women on the Banks of the Seine also received the same treatment. Picasso made this large schematic painting of his kitchen with its stove. He also made paintings of his house at Valoris. But Picasso's domestic happiness did not last long. By 1953, he was already representing symbolically the discord which was breaking up his home life. At the same time, his art reflected the threats of impending war. Even his children played warlike games. In 1947, Picasso had painted a memorial to those Spanish soldiers who had fallen in defense of France during the recent war. Then in 1952-53, he executed two enormous compositions symbolizing war and peace to decorate the walls of a disused Romanesque chapel in Vallauris. War, in all its senseless, destructive horror. We are using a flashlight to reveal these compositions, detail by detail, as though we were exploring a cave, because that is how Picasso himself wants them to be discovered.
Artamia sia.
Peace. Horses grow wings. Children dance. Birds are in a fishbowl. Fish are in a cage because, says Picasso, in peacetime, anything is possible. Races of all colors unite under the sign of the dove and of a radiant universal sun. 1954, a year of peaceful transition. A recumbent nude in the studio. A portrait of a modern girl. A woman dressing her hair. (1954), the year in which a new woman came into Picasso's life. Jacqueline. Jacqueline, who brought him happiness, and has since played a major role in his work. Captivated by her beauty and her look, Picasso has painted her repeatedly. The natural Jacqueline. Jacqueline in the costume of a woman of Arles. A drawing of Jacqueline made upside down for fun. Paintings dedicated to Jacqueline. Jacqueline as the chatelaine of Vauvenargues, the castle outside Aix-en-Provence that they bought in 1958. Jacqueline in Turkish costume. Jacqueline is the inspiration of pictorial variations on Delacroix's famous composition, The Women of Algiers. Jacqueline, the patient model, sitting in the studio of their new home in Cannes. A studio like a magician's sanctum where mysterious things happen. Picasso's own works are there. A sculpture, canvases, his brushes and palette. Jacqueline suns herself on the balcony or lolls in a rocking chair. From his window, Picasso looks out across the town to the Bay of Cannes. The many reworkings of this important canvas are recorded in the successive dates on the back. Since 1920, bathers and beach scenes have often been the subject of Picasso's pictures. Between 1955 and 1958, he was again attracted to them. But this time, his figures were more fantastic, more sculptural than in the past. Picasso's most monumental treatment of this subject was a big mural executed in 1957-58 for the UNESCO building in Paris. Here, however, Picasso also sounded a grim warning, for the idyllic atmosphere of the scene is shattered by death falling headlong from the sky. Barcelona, in the heart of the Gothic quarter where Picasso lived around 1900. A Picasso museum has recently been opened in the Berenguer Palace. It was conceived by Picasso's friend Sabartés, who bequeathed to it all the works he owned. But Picasso, too, has made rich gifts to the museum, including 46 variations inspired by Velázquez's composition, the Meninas. Once again, Picasso turned to a Spanish old master. In analyzing this composition of an artist at work with models in his studio, Picasso first examined the figures of the princesses and their dueñas. Full-length studies alternate with close-ups of a head. Picasso varies his lighting, switches from one to another as in a film, and arrives at daring simplifications. When he rested from these labors, Picasso looked out at the Bay of Cannes through a window in the loft where he had installed a family of pigeons. Refreshed, Picasso returned to Velázquez's haunting composition and began to investigate the mysteries of its spatial organization. After 3 months, the series faded out on the charming princess making a curtsy. In 1958-59, Picasso exchanged the ritual of a 17th century Spanish court for another Spanish rite, the bullfight, about which he feels passionately. Since his earliest youth, when he sold his own bullfight scenes outside the arena to pay for a seat, Picasso has repeatedly found pictorial inspiration in this colorful and hazardous spectacle. Famous bullfighters have been among his friends, and he has depicted all phases of the corrida. He has designed bullfight posters, organized his own corridas, and used several techniques to represent the action. The 30 painted terracotta bulls which Picasso gave to the Museum of Céret in 1954 shows him at his most inventive. Picasso conjured up an arena within the hollow form and filled it with successive episodes of a fight, seen in different lights and from different viewpoints. Lino cuts of 1959. In 1958, Picasso executed 26 aquatints to illustrate the classical manual of bullfighting, written in 1804 by the famous matador Pepe Illo. Here, Picasso confronts Goya on his own territory and reviews the corrida stage by stage, depicting some practices which are no longer used. Fighters and bulls have become part of Picasso's private and popular imagery. The bull, as well as the blind minotaur, has generated a whole personal mythology. He even joins in bacchanalian revels. The picador becomes a centaur. Centaurs and bulls have such physical reality for Picasso that he has modeled them. He has modeled other animals too. An owl, a cock, a cat, a little bird. Picasso uses any scrap materials available. This vase of flowers was made with nails, plaster, and a watering can. A woman reading. A girl skipping rope. Pushing a child in a pram. Male and female figures. A pregnant woman. A monumental female head. A series of small heads of the 1950s. The famous Man with a Lamb of 1944 guards the entrance to Picasso's sculpture studio at his home at Mougins near Cannes. Inside are sculptures of all dates, of many subjects and in various materials. Picasso's work table with his tools. box in which Picasso put scraps, any of which may serve for a sculpture, like the toy cars, which created this baboon's head. Or the bicycle saddle and handlebars, which made this bull's head. Or the fork and faucet of this crane. Three monkeys in cut-out sheet metal of 1961. A clown's head. Female heads. Here the metal is bent and painted. Once again, Jacqueline's features reappear. Years before, in 1912, Picasso had used tin to create cubist guitars. My dream in music, said Cocteau, would be to listen to Picasso's guitars. In 1958, Picasso bought the Chateau de Vauvenargues near Aix-en-Provence. Taking stock of his new surroundings, as always, Picasso painted the objects and people around him. His dog, his children, and even an elaborate buffet in the dining room. Soon after, he had to move from his studio at Cannes because his view of the sea was blocked by a new apartment building, so he acquired another house in Mougins nearby. There he produced in 1961 a series of variations on Manet's Déjeuner sur l'herbe, an open-air picnic at which artists disport themselves with naked female companions. Soon afterwards, the females in these lively variations inspired a sequence of vivacious nudes for which Picasso again evolved a new formal language. Since then, Picasso has subjected the women in his paintings to adventures and misadventures of many kinds, as in The Rape of the Sabine Women of 1962. Picasso's concentrated interest in the form, the character, and the moods of the female led him to start in 1963 on a lengthy behavioristic study of the strange relationships between artists and their models. The influence of the theater and the cinema on Picasso's pictorial conceptions became apparent at this time. In his engraved illustrations for poems by Pierre Reverdy, Picasso began to consider the artist and the model separately. There followed a long sequence of artists of all types. Young, old, bearded, clean-shaven, self-assured, romantic, perplexed. Next came the models. Seductive, bored, playful, majestic, virginal. Next, he allowed their relationship to become more intimate. But the series was destined to end on a note of anxiety, and with a last affectionate look at the landscape of Mougins. In November 1965, Picasso went to Paris for medical reasons. In the garden of Saint-Germain-des-Prés, one of his sculptures now commemorates the close friend of his youth, the poet Guillaume Apollinaire. When Picasso resumed painting in 1966, he found a new subject. The amorous artist of the preceding series was replaced by a blustering and often frustrated musketeer, a romantic character symbolizing a past that had gone. Between March and October 1968, Picasso, for whom engraving has always been a favorite technique, executed 347 new sheets. In these, he took up again many of his recent subjects, developing the activities of the main personages in a theatrical manner. Picasso in one of the studios in his house at Mougins. Hundreds of paintings and drawings not yet seen accumulate everywhere. The most recent are stacked in a corner. Picasso uses this balcony to show his latest canvases and also to relax. Unless your picture goes wrong, it will be no good. One of his own maxims serves to remind Picasso that it is difficult to create great art. Jacqueline appears in the studio for a moment. Picasso shows two of his favorite possessions, portraits by Henri Rousseau of himself and his wife. The canvases which Picasso has just shown went in May 1970 to an exhibition of his previous year's output in the Palace of the Popes at Avignon. 165 oils and 45 drawings. sequence of 10 drawings was made by Picasso in a single day, 26 November 1969. Avignon's annual festival is a popular occasion. This unique exhibition was a gesture by Picasso to make his art available to a large public, and especially to the young. No matter how private the emotions his paintings enshrine, Picasso feels that works of art are meaningless unless they are seen and appreciated by others. That is why he enjoys the sight of housewives bustling around the man with a lamb on the market square at Vallauris. Picasso has been involved with many monumental sculptures and decorative projects in recent years. A concrete figure of 1962 in the garden of his dealer, Kahnweiler. The wall at the Chateau de Castille, done in 1963. Both were executed under Picasso's supervision by a Norwegian artist who reproduced his designs by sandblasting on concrete. Female head at New York University in the same technique. Another female head of 1964 outside a lycée at Marseille. Picasso's most monumental outdoor sculpture is, however, the three-dimensional female head carried out in steel for the Civic Center of Chicago in 1967. And even in Barcelona, his adoptive city, the walls of the Catalan College of Architects are engraved with views of the city and popular Catalan imagery, drawn specially by Picasso in 1962. It is in front of these that the people dance the Sardana of peace every Sunday. Across the 30 years which separate Guernica from today, there has been a continuity, not of style, but of theme in Picasso's art. For where the dancing fawns of Antipolis were symbolic of Picasso's own happiness and relief that the war was over, so Picasso sees in the Sardana at Barcelona a symbol of a continuing peace in the world. In these last 30 years, Picasso has become more involved with mankind and with world events in his art, while at the same time making it a vehicle for private emotions. That is to say, he has looked outward and drawn inspiration from everyone he has known or seen. He has indeed recorded pictorially the fear, aspirations, and hopes of our contemporary world. Thus, he has underscored repeatedly the horrors of war and the blessings of peace, And he has drawn on his personal experiences to reveal the power and fascination of human love. Never in the whole of man's history has any one artist created so many powerful, touching, humanly committed, and often diverting works of art. And certainly no other artist has ever been master of so many different techniques as it has been part of the purpose of this film to reveal.